My name is Nora Lisa and I'm 39 years old. And the day my parents changed the locks on my own house was the day I finally understood how badly my family had betrayed me. I stood on the front porch in Asheville, North Carolina, staring at a brass deadbolt that had never been there before, my overnight bag sitting beside my feet like some cruel joke. My father, Raymond, stood behind the glass door with his arms crossed, while my mother, Elaine, refused to meet my eyes. Then Dad mouthed 4 words that still echo in my head. "Pack your stuff, Nora." I almost laughed because seriously I had spent 12 years paying that mortgage. The deed had my name on it. Every kitchen cabinet, every floorboard, every dollar of that house had a story I could prove. But they knew something I didn't know yet, and I knew something they had absolutely no idea I had discovered. 3 weeks earlier, I had sat inside a county courtroom watching my parents testify for my ex-husband, Marcus, during our divorce case. My own mother looked directly at the judge and said I had always been reckless with money. My father claimed Marcus had practically built my life for me. I remember gripping the edge of the table so hard my fingers went numb. They lied under oath and I couldn't understand why. Marcus had cheated on me, drained our joint account, and disappeared with another woman, yet somehow my parents believed him over their own daughter. But that courtroom betrayal was only the beginning, because 2 nights before they changed my locks, I found an old envelope hidden inside my father's desk, and what was written across the front made my stomach drop. It had my name on it, Marcus's signature, and one date that changed everything. For 3 weeks, I had been trying to understand why my parents suddenly believed Marcus, and every answer led me deeper into something I wished I had never uncovered. After the courtroom hearing, I drove back to my house in Asheville with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I kept replaying my mother's testimony in my head. "Nora has always been impulsive," she had told the judge, like she was describing a stranger. But I knew my mother. She never forgot a detail unless forgetting it benefited someone. That night, I opened the envelope I had found in Dad's desk. Inside was a copy of a home equity agreement dated 18 months earlier, carrying Marcus's signature and a bank stamp I recognized. My stomach tightened because I had never signed that document. Yet somehow $86,000 had been borrowed against my house while I was still married to Marcus. I called the bank first thing the next morning, pretending I was calm. The woman on the phone verified the account, then paused when I asked who had authorized the loan. "Your husband submitted the paperwork," she said carefully, "but the supporting documents indicate your parents were listed as witnesses." I froze. My parents had witnessed a loan against my house without telling me. And suddenly the courtroom made sense. Marcus wasn't fighting only for money. He was trying to protect that loan. I hired a private investigator named Caleb Brooks, and within 4 days he found something worse. The $86,000 hadn't gone into Marcus's business, our household, or anything connected to our marriage. Almost all of it had been transferred to an account belonging to my parents. Seriously, I felt sick. They had used my house as collateral, taken the money, then helped Marcus make me look irresponsible in court. But there was one detail Caleb couldn't explain. The transfer happened exactly 6 days after Marcus filed for divorce. Then Caleb called me late Friday night and said, "Nora, I found the original agreement, and you need to see who actually signed your name." I drove straight to his office because by then I knew the truth wasn't just going to hurt me. It was going to destroy everything my parents thought they had hidden. I walked into Caleb's office expecting another piece of bad news, but when he slid the original agreement across his desk, my entire body went cold. The signature on the bottom looked like mine, but I knew immediately it wasn't. I had signed my name thousands of times, and this one was too careful, too slow, almost like someone had practiced copying it. Caleb pointed to the witness section. My parents' names were there, exactly where the bank required them. "They didn't just witness this, Nora," he said. "They helped authenticate it." I stared at him, trying to process what I was seeing. Then he opened another folder and showed me something that made my jaw drop. 6 months before my divorce, my parents had created a private agreement with Marcus. If the house was ever sold or transferred during the divorce, they would receive the first $86,000 from the proceeds. They had basically turned my home into their emergency fund without telling me. But there was more. Caleb had traced the money and discovered that $31,000 went toward my mother's medical bills, $22,000 paid off my father's business debt, and the rest disappeared through several transfers connected to Marcus. I felt betrayed by my husband, but this was different. These were the people who had taught me to trust family. The next morning, I went straight to the courthouse with Caleb and filed a fraud complaint, attaching the bank records, the forged signature, and the private agreement. I thought that would finally stop them. I was wrong. That afternoon my mother called. Her voice sounded strangely calm. "Nora, we need to talk before you make this worse." I asked her how she could have signed that agreement. She started crying and said Marcus had promised to save the family from financial disaster. Then Dad came on the phone and said something that made my blood run cold. "You need to understand, sweetheart, the house was never really yours to begin with." I hung up. 10 minutes later, I received a text from Marcus with a photo of my front door. Under it he wrote, "You should come home before they change the locks." I drove back as fast as I could, but when I reached my street, my parents were already standing outside my house, and a locksmith was working on my door. I pulled into my driveway and saw the locksmith standing beside my front door, but what caught my attention was the smile on my father's face. "Pack your stuff," he said, like he had been waiting all day to deliver the sentence. My mother stood beside him holding a folder, while Marcus leaned against his car with his arms crossed. For a second I felt that old panic rise in my chest, but then I remembered what was inside Caleb's folder. I got out of my car, walked straight toward them and said, "You guys really have no idea what I know, do you?" Nobody answered. I pulled out my phone and played the recording Caleb had made during our meeting, including the bank records, the forged agreement, and the private contract promising my parents the first $86,000 from my house. My father's face went pale. Marcus stopped smiling. My mother whispered, "Where did you get that?" I looked directly at her and said, "From the truth you were too careless to hide." Then I handed the locksmith a copy of the actual deed, the original closing documents, and the fraud complaint already filed with the court. The locksmith quietly stepped away from the door. Marcus tried to laugh it off, saying this was all a misunderstanding, but I cut him off. "No, Marcus. A misunderstanding is forgetting an appointment. Forging my signature and stealing money from my house is a crime." My father started shouting that he had done everything for the family, but I finally told him what I had discovered that morning. The $86,000 transfer had been traced all the way back to an account Marcus opened under a business name connected to him. The money was gone, but the paper trail was perfect. My parents had not only helped him take the loan, they had knowingly signed documents pretending I had approved it. 2 weeks later, the judge reviewed everything, froze the remaining accounts, and ordered Marcus to repay the money. My parents were forced to sign a settlement acknowledging that the house belonged entirely to me, and the forged agreement was officially void. They also had to cover the legal costs they had caused. I never got the apology I once imagined, but I got something better: proof. Proof that I had not been reckless, crazy, selfish, or irresponsible like they told the court. I was the person who had trusted the wrong people. Months later, I changed every lock myself. I kept the old brass deadbolt in a box as a reminder of the day they tried to throw me out of my own life. Marcus disappeared from my world, and my parents stopped calling. It hurt, no doubt, but I finally understood something. Family doesn't get to steal your peace and then demand access to your home. I stood on my porch one evening, looking across the Blue Ridge Mountains, and whispered, "This time the key belongs to me." And honestly, that was the first time in years I felt completely free.